Hello YouTube fam, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Tina and I make videos on lifestyle, home, and DIY projects every single week. Today's video is a highly requested one because I'm showing you guys all of my tips and tricks for polymer clay projects. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you'll know that I've fallen in love with polymer clay. I started working with polymer clay late last year and I've shared so many different projects with you guys. And along the way, I've just learned so much about working with polymer clay, and I have different tips and tricks kind of sprinkled throughout all my videos. But I thought it'd be helpful just to put it all in one place, and I know a lot of you guys also requested this, so here is the video. I'm gonna be answering some FAQs and making a really cute project along the way, so I really hope that you guys find this video to be helpful. Before we get started, I wanted to talk about today's video sponsor, Squarespace, and as you guys already know, I'm working on my website. Most recently, I just finished my logo, and I'm so happy that you guys love it because I'm obsessed with it, and currently I'm working on my brand identity, and I recently just figured out my color palette. I'll pop it here on the screen, but I am absolutely in love with how they all look together. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. So everything is slowly coming together on my Squarespace website, and if you guys aren't familiar with Squarespace, they are a one-stop shop for building a beautiful website. They seriously have the most beautiful templates and you can customize it to exactly what you need it for. So whether you're building out a portfolio, a blog, or a small business website, they have got you covered. And on the back end, they have all the tools that you guys need to sell a product or service, or just to get your website analytics to make sure that your marketing is on point. I would definitely recommend them to you guys, especially if you've been thinking about creating a website for a while. And if you are interested in checking them out, make sure that you click on my link down below to get 10% off of your first website or domain. Alright, so jumping into this video, we're going to be working on a project and I'll be answering some of your FAQs as well, so let's go ahead and get started. Hello from VoiceOver Tina. When it comes to polymer clay, I like to use Original Sculpey in white, and it is one of the most widely available polymer clays that you could buy in craft stores and online. It's also pretty affordable, and I like to buy it in bulk on Amazon. And right when you open the package, you're going to notice that the clay is super hard and will also break into little pieces. So to start any project, you'll need to condition the clay to soften it up. One of the easiest ways is just to wedge it against a desk or to roll it around in your hands, and just having the warmth of your hands is going to really help soften it up. Polymer clay is man-made from a plastic PVC base, so even though you can work with it using some basic clay techniques like traditional ceramic clay, there are going to be a lot of differences. There are also many different brands and types of polymer clay that you can buy, and each one has a different hardness, texture, and baking times. For the most part, I use polymer clay to create home decor DIY, so the Original Sculpey works great for that. But I know that other artists who create charms and miniature items and jewelry will choose to work with other brands and types of clays. So be sure to keep this in mind and experiment with different polymer clays to choose the perfect one for your project. For different color options, I just use the Craft Smart brand from Michaels. This isn't exactly the best one out there, but since the popularity of polymer clay has gone up so much, it's just been a little bit harder for me to find other brands in person, so this one works well for what I need it for. And what's great about these colored clays is that you can mix them up to create custom color combinations and also to create beautiful patterns. By adding in a little bit of black or white clay, you can create darker or lighter shades of that same color. And by using basic color theory, you can mix together custom colors for your clay creations. And if you want to minimize how many colors that you need in your collection, I would say just to get the primary colors and use those as the base to mix up virtually any color that you can imagine. For tools and materials, you can buy kits with acrylic rollers, mats, dotting tools, and cutters, and so many other things that you can use for your projects. But for the basics, I like to stick to an acrylic roller, or you can use any cylindrical object at home. And if you've been watching my channel for a while, you'll know that I started with just a soda can. I also always use an X-Acto knife or a straight edge to cut out my pieces. And you can use so many other household items in your home. So for example, instead of cutters or molds, I will use a random lid. And instead of a mat or a glass piece to work on, I usually will use wax paper underneath my clay. I would also recommend using sandpaper or a sanding block at 400 grit or higher for a fine finish to smooth everything out after baking. And of course, we cannot forget about our best tools of all, our hands. Now that we have all of our materials, I'm going to walk you through the basic steps of creating a polymer clay project by making a super trendy ruffled bowl. This is a great project for beginners, and there are so many ways that you can begin a polymer clay project, but one of the most simple methods is by rolling out a slab. To create an even slab, I stacked on 2 popsicle sticks and taped them together, and then I placed them on both sides and started rolling. This is a great hack, and you can adjust the thickness by adding on more popsicle sticks. A lot of polymer clay artists also use a pasta machine to roll out slabs, which is a great investment if you plan on making a ton of projects or even selling your clay creations. And if you get any air bubbles, you can just go ahead and just poke it to release the air inside and roll it right on out. Once the slab was evenly rolled out, I actually went back and rolled it out even thinner without the popsicle sticks, and at this point the slab was pretty even, so we're able to keep the thickness consistent. Then I let it sit for about 30 minutes to harden up a little bit, and this just makes it easier to get a clean slice in the clay since it becomes quite soft after rolling it out so much. My slab was just large enough to put this bowl on top of it and to trace out a circle, so I used my trusty X-Acto knife around the whole entire bowl. Then I removed the excess clay, and we're just gonna go ahead and soften up the harsh edges with some rubbing alcohol. So I'm just using my fingers here, but you could also use something like a Q-tip. And rubbing alcohol is really great to have on hand because it allows you to get rid of any fingerprints and even the dust that's on the surface of your clay. It just smooths everything out so nice and saves me from doing even more sanding later. So we're going to pick up our clay, and I just like to flip it over by folding the wax paper underneath. And to create the bowl shape, I'm using a glass jar and laying the clay right over top of that. Then I'm just taking the clay and folding it inwards to create this ruffled look. Ideally, I would have used an oven-safe bowl, but I didn't have one small enough, so this jar was going to work perfectly. And I would definitely suggest making the clay about double the size of the bowl that you're using underneath, just to make sure that we have enough clay all around. And as I'm folding the clay inwards, I'm creating a bit of variation so that the bowl looks more organic and isn't super symmetrical all the way around. This bowl is very reminiscent of a larger one that I've seen on Lulu in Georgia, but that one is quite a bit more pricey. So it's looking pretty good now, and I'm gonna go ahead and just use more alcohol to smooth out the edges. And I definitely should have done this before placing it on the jar because it was a lot more tricky, so please learn from my mistakes. Once I was happy with it, it's time to place it into the oven. So we're just gonna follow the instructions on the package. And for this one, we're baking it at 275 degrees Fahrenheit for about 15 minutes. And depending on how thick your piece is, you're gonna need to increase the time in the oven. So while that's baking in the oven, I wanted to share a few of my favorite tips, tricks, and hacks for working with polymer clay. So let's first talk about creating patterns. When using colored polymer clay, you can create so many fun patterns and designs. To create a marbled look, you can take 2 or more colors and twist them together. And you basically just want to roll it around until the colors start to swirl, and this creates a fun marbled effect that you can use for any project. You can also create a stone veining effect by cutting out small pieces of clay. Then you can coat it with acrylic paint and then mold it into a log shape. And from there, we're gonna slice it and then roll it out to reveal a fun stone look with varying colors. To create a terrazzo effect, you can take multiple colors of clay and then create thin little slabs. Then you can cut them out into teeny tiny little shapes to emulate the terrazzo chips. And from there, we're just gonna put them onto another slab of clay, and this is gonna be the background color. Then you can just roll it over to blend the chips into the slab, and voila, you have a beautiful terrazzo slab of clay. I have more in-depth tutorials for each one of these patterns, so if you guys would like to see the full tutorial, I'll have them each linked down below along with all the materials that I'm using for today's video. Aside from letting the clay sit out to harden, you can also pop it into the freezer for about 10 to 15 minutes to harden as well. And this is especially helpful if you need to create clean cuts into the clay, or you can use this trick if you find that your clay is just too soft to handle and work with. If you would like to create a guide for your design, you can simply draw onto a piece of paper with a graphite pencil, and you can place that right onto your slab of clay and then just rub along the design to transfer the pencil marks onto the clay. And this works out really perfectly. Just keep in mind that this is also going to be mirrored onto the clay. You can also try out the carbon copy hack, so you can print out an image, then you can flip that over and shade the backside with the pencil, and then when you flip it over, you can trace on top of that printed image, and this is going to transfer the graphite underneath. I've also gotten many questions about avoiding your rolling pin from sticking onto your clay, so one of the easiest ways is just by placing a piece of wax paper right on top of your slab, and you can roll over that. Or you can also use a thin layer of baby powder, cornstarch, or baking soda, and this works great as well. If you have a project that requires a lot of clay or just need a structure to build your clay on top of, you can try using aluminum foil. So you can take it and crumple it into your desired shape, and this is going to make a great base that you can sculpt your clay on top of and just pop it right into the oven. So those were some of my best tips to create beautiful home decor pieces with polymer clay. If you guys have any other questions, please let me know in the comment section below and I'd be more than happy to answer them. Now let's get back to our project. After the 15 minutes were up, I'm just gonna go ahead and turn off my oven, and then I'm gonna let it cool down completely before removing the clay from the oven. This is gonna help you strengthen the clay, and as a word of caution, if you take it out too early or handle it before it cools down, you could risk breaking it. Now it's time to sand, so I'm using 400 grit sandpaper, and I'm just going around the whole entire piece in small circular motions. I really like to take my time when sanding because it really cleans it up and makes it look so much more of a finished piece. It definitely makes a world of a difference, so please do not skip this step. And be sure to wear a mask because there's going to be a lot of small dust particles flying around. Alternatively, you could use wet sandpaper, which avoids getting dust everywhere, and it also gives it a really nice smooth finish. One question that I get asked frequently is how I choose between using polymer clay versus air dry clay for a project, and that really just depends on the functionality of the piece. For the most part, both will work well when creating home decor pieces like trinket dishes, wall hangings, and sculptures, but I like to work with polymer clay if it's something that needs to be a bit more durable and also more water resistant. I find that air dry clay is much more fragile, and since polymer clay is plastic based, it's not as easy to break. This is something that you definitely want to keep in mind, especially if you're planning on making something with small pieces or even thin pieces. But at the end of the day, it's all up to you on what you want to use for your clay projects. Now that we're done sanding, I'm just wiping away everything with a damp cloth and our piece is finished. The original white Sculpey color is really nice on its own, so if you want to keep it this way without any sealant or paint, I think it looks super chic and minimal. And this is perfect to use as a catch-all dish on your coffee table or entryway, and I'm totally in love with how this looks. So if you don't have colored polymer clay, you can always paint it. So I wanted to show you guys how to paint and seal your pieces as well. So I'm just using an acrylic paint for this in the color Mossy Meadow by Folk Art, and this is the most perfect sage green color. The first coat is going to go on pretty sheer, and I wanted to paint it as evenly as I could without getting any thick layers or harsh brush strokes. Once it gets a little bit more difficult to hold the piece and paint it, I like to place it on top of a lid or a bowl of some sort, and that way you can just turn it without having to touch the piece, and it just makes the painting process so much easier. We're going to give this 2 coats and let this dry completely. So Sculpey does have their own glazes that you can use, and it comes in a satin or gloss finish, but one of the best sealants I found is water-based polyurethane, so you can get this in a variety of finishes, and I'm just using a matte one just to keep this more flat. You can find this at your local hardware store, and this is a great sealant because it doesn't yellow and it also protects your paint, making your pieces more durable. I just love how this color looks on this piece. It's so fun yet sophisticated. This would also look amazing with a fun pattern or some speckling. Both the white clay color and the sage green look beautiful, but let me know in the comments which version you guys liked better. I really hope that you guys found this video to be helpful. Those were all of my best tips and tricks when it comes to working with polymer clay. I would love to know which tip you guys found to be most helpful or one that you didn't know about before. I always love learning new things about different media, so if you guys have any tips, definitely leave them down below. Huge thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. If you're interested in checking them out and getting 10% off of your first website or domain, make sure that you click on the link down below and use my special discount code. As always, if you were inspired by this video and make any polymer clay projects, make sure that you tag me on Instagram so that I can see it and leave it some love. I will share some of your projects here on the screen. Thank you so much for sharing your creativity with me and just hanging out with me every single week. Stay inspired, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!